My name is Deirdre-siobhan Dillon and I ran as an independent in the 2024 local elections in Offaly, Ireland. And to be very clear, my intention was never to get elected, but make a platform to better inform others who share similar concerns. In the midst of the current contrived fuel crisis, which has much in common with the last contrived crisis carried out by the elite criminal gangs of the world, we are told by the media for the last number of weeks about the impending fuel crisis and soon coming even worse crisis. But am I the only one who notices that the same said Irish politicians went off on holidays for 2 weeks, which proves at least two things. That number one, they are not concerned about getting re-elected, and number two, they are pre-scripted by their handlers, and so they can go on holidays and the agenda continues. On the first point about the seeming politicians and their not being concerned about being re-elected, there is an alarming reason for this. I covered in my somewhat censored previous video of the 19th of March 2026 that investigates systemic vote rigging by the European Commission and their pan-European proxy in Ireland, Commas and Naman. The public have been kept in the dark about this by the media, the so-called alternative media, and all of the so-called elected politicians and all government bodies who claim to protect the public from unlawful activity. For example, the Attorney General, the Chief State Solicitor's Office, the DPP, the Electoral Commission, etc., and all of the aforementioned who have an incestuous, mutual, selfish self-interest at the expense of the public who they feed off. Over the last week or so, there has been a lot of postings by those who claim to be representing hauliers, transport businesses, even farmers, using the name Affordable Ireland campaign. Curiously, there is no clear names of any individuals involved, but claim to have set up a committee and have sent off a letter to politicians that the public have not seen a copy of yet. From searches online, the profile of posts appears to be a combination of Marxist groups and fake alternative media-controlled opposition individuals. There is very little mention, close to no mention, of the proportion of increased fuel costs by being both derived from greedy government VAT and so-called carbon taxes, likely because the aforementioned Marxist groups are very much in favour of those two oppressive costs upon the poor. I hope to do a video on the carbon tax scam in the near future. Typically, such types, while they agitate as much as possible, but have a strict rule never to have a rational, viable solution to anything and keep the vicious spiral going downwards. This current group of agitators who are trying to stir up protests that would be detrimental to the poor working class in Ireland through shutting down the transport and the commerce that the general public depend upon. And keep in mind that this will not have the slightest impact on the vote-rigged politicians who never have to be concerned about public opinion. And if it came to it, where they were in the slightest danger, they have at their disposal the unlawfully armed Garda Síochána gang, who have well proved their ability to undermine the fundamental rights of the Irish people under their false pretences, and would certainly have no compunction of any harm they would do to Irish people to defend a vote-rig criminal politician. In a common law and Irish context, protesters by default have no rights, and the only purpose of their protest is to attain a right that they do not have. Those who identify as protesters essentially waive their rights. In Irish statutes which deal only with fictional persons and not with any living man or woman, they are carefully written up to take advantage of those who have been deceived into identifying as fictional persons, including protesters. Especially the Public Order Act. Gardaí are trained to entrap people who identify as protesters so they can claim that they have waived their rights, and the Gardaí can cart them away in the paddy wagon. Problems as serious as vote fraud and systemic corruption on such an unprecedented scale will not be solved by misguided tantrums of those who are so easily deceived. The pro-EU farmers protesting their beloved EU has proved protests do not work, and this is why the government loves to see the controlled protests for people to let off some steam and too soon to give up when they realise that they have been shafted and nothing changes until the process is repeated over and over. The rigged election fake Taoiseach Prime Minister Micheál Martin admitted at the start of the fake crisis that Ireland got oil from the North Sea and Norway and not the Gulf, and there was no real shortage of supply, but not overlooking the fact that Ireland is extremely rich in natural resources including oil and gas, to name but a few. But through the systemic corruption and fraud over the last 100 years, the foreign occupation government has had a policy to limit or prevent Irish people from using their own natural resources, but have facilitated their friends, like Rothschild Royal Dutch Shell, to help themselves to the natural resources of the Irish people as a means to deprive Irish people from their own wealth and strategically contrive poverty. So, as it stands, the rigged election politicians are sitting upon trillions of the Irish people's natural resources and deliberately oppressing and repressing the native Irish. Thank you for your interest in this matter, which affects all of us who love our freedoms and our nations, hence all of the time and research put in by myself and others concerned. Please follow me on other platforms listed in the description to better offset the unlawful censorship until we fairly resolve the matter.